Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. So Spencer, that's 3 verses of a hymn called the Guru Stotra that I do at the beginning of a class to invoke the grace of my teacher. Now, let's practice some more our Mangalam, our Shanti mantra, and I have figured out something that I think will help with the chanting. So please look down on the line that begins Shrutam Me Ma. You see that? Mm-hmm. And the next word is Prahasi. And it's followed by an R, a Ra. Take that Ra out and put in an H sound. That's where the Visarga goes. Because the Pandit chanting, it splits the Sandhi there.
Oh, okay.
It'll make it a whole lot easier. So it should be Prahasi Anena. You see that?
Way easier. Yeah.
Much, much easier. Okay. So, and if anybody wants the actual Sanskrit, anybody need that?
Playing from iPhone.
Om Vande Manasi Pratisthita. Mano me vachi pratisthitham. Mano me vachi pratisthitham. Aviravir maedi. Aviravir maedi. Vedasya mahani saha. Vedasya mahani saha. Sridham me ma prathasi. Sridham me ma prathasi. Anena Vitena, Anena Vitena, Ahoratram Sandakami, Ahoratram Sandakami, Vritam Vadishyami, Vritam Vadishyami, Satyam Vadishyami, Satyam Vadishyami, Tanmamavatu, Tanmamavatu, Tadbhaktaramavatu, Tadbhaktaramavatu, Avatu Mam, Avatu Mam, Avatu Bhaktaram, Avatu Bhaktaram, Avatu Bhaktaram, Avatu Bhaktaram. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay. That's better. We're getting it. It's a toughie. It's a toughie. So this is for you, Spencer, a Shanti mantra, one that is new to me, and it's from Rig Veda, and it's the one that's associated with this particular Upanishad. So where are we in our text?
Chapter 1, Section 1, number 4.
And what page is that?
60.
On page 60. Will you help us out, please?
61, 4a. Tamabhyata patasya bhitatapasya mukham nirabhidyata yathandam mukhad vag vachognihi. When he had been brooded upon, there burst forth on him the lump, a cleft in the shape of a mouth as an egg does. From the mouth proceeded speech, and from speech fire.
Now, again, this is mystic symbolism. So what we're talking about is one of the many creation stories that we get in the Vedas. And this is not to be interpreted as historical fact. So it's about you and me. My personal opinion, most creation myths in most religions are about the mind returning from samadhi. So here we had consciousness. Out of it comes the great impulse. Where we have that first forking of consciousness into subject object. And then here we have the creation of the sense of individuality. And this is just a fabulous metaphor. Have any of you seen a baby chick or any bird hatch out of an egg? Yes, no?
Yeah. Mhm.
So you've got the egg. And this has all sorts of symbolism. One of the names that we have for the total mind is Hiranyagarbha. What does that literally mean?
Golden egg.
Golden egg, the total mind. Now, out of the chicken egg or the bird egg, when you see it hatch, you see and the shell cracks. And what peeks out of the shell first?
The beak.
The beak of the baby bird. And then what happens? What's the baby bird start doing? cheep, cheep, cheep. So the mysticism here, the idea is out of our total mind, this incredible faculty that human beings have of speech. Now, again, we talked a bit about this last week. One of the most beautiful words that we have in Sanskrit is mantra. These are all Vedic mantras that we're chanting. But a mantra, who can define what a mantra is? A hymn, might also say it's a spell. It's an intention. But the root is manas, which means mind. So it is this link for humans between thought and speech. Some of us think only in terms of pictures. But most humans think in terms of words. So here, what the Upanishad is talking about, the next level of moving into more and more grossification, becoming an embodied person, is this faculty of speech that arises out of mind, like a baby bird coming out of the egg. And its mouth comes out, its beak. Cheep, 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 cheep. We get words.
I think if I remember correctly, the Rutra has to do with the vehicle, I think. And so,
Oh yes, like Ratra.
yeah, and so you get words like transportation and travel.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so mantra is a vehicle for
The way in
mind.
which the mind travels.
Yeah.
Fabulous, fabulous. Yes, yes. Fabulous, fabulous.
Wow.
Yes,
Right. It
Yeah.
goes out.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Beautiful.
So next mantra, please.
Nasike nirabidhyetam nasikabhyam prana pranat vayuhu. Then his nostrils came forth, and from the nostrils the smell, and from the power of smell the air.
Okay, but he uses the word actually in the Sanskrit prana. Doesn't use the word vayu. Vayu is
He also
air.
uses vayu. He says
Vayu.
pranat vayu.
Yes. But what we want to do is understand the connection, the deep mystical connection between the vital energy, prana, and vayu, air. So the implication here, the nostrils come out, and from there we have inhalation, exhalation, and we have the whole understanding loaded within this mantra of what we call the pancha vayu, the five vital airs. So we take the prana, and again, prana is not breath. We learn to control the vital energy through control of the breath. But just briefly, we've been through this in other classes. So we have the main prana, which governs inhalation. Then we have apana, which governs exhalation, but also elimination. And then we have samana, which is the digestion of food and how it goes to all various parts of the body. I got this right this time, didn't I? Then comes dhyana, which is the circulation of the blood, centered in the heart. It's not only the blood, but it's also all the nadis, the energy flows that go out throughout the whole system. And then the most fascinating one, Udana. Udana is frequently the prana that governs thinking. So, for example, Spencer, when you were there for Navaratri, did you guys fast?
Yes.
Why do so many spiritual traditions suggest, West, we say prayer and fasting? What's the difference between a fast and a diet?
Fast is designed to build energy.
And how and why does that happen?
I don't know.
Because, of course, what is it that gets all the prawns doing their thing? It's eating. You deny the body food, all the pranas collect. And the udana, the prana that controls thinking, collects, slows down. So did you have the experience that your mind became much clearer?
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, Udana has two other powers. It's actually one power used in two ways. I call it the ejection button. So if you're in a jet aircraft, a fighter jet, and opposing enemy sends up a missile and it knocks off your wing and the pilot has to eject, what happens? Pushes the ejection button, canopy comes off, and what happens to his seat? Out it comes. Hopefully then the parachute opens. So Udana is the pranic energy that moves the subtle body out of the physical body at the time of death. So if you've ever been at a deathbed, see the physical body. If you have a quiet, subtle mind, you might even see the subtle body kind of shimmering above it. Who's had that experience? You're a doc. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Then when the person finally dies, all that energy releases and disperses. That's Udana. Where is the other time we push the ejection button?
Birth. Birth.
Nope. Meditation. Now, those of you who may have read the dialogues of Plato, one of his most famous is the Phaedo, which is the story of the death of Socrates. One of the things Socrates says in that is, what else is philosophy? That was his word for literally the love of wisdom. Than practicing dying. Every time we meditate, we practice dying. I withdraw my identity from an awareness and attention from the physical body. I withdraw my attention from the energy body, the pranamaya core. I withdraw from the mind and all its feelings that we have. I withdraw from the intellect and its thoughting. And I make sure I withdraw from unconsciousness Yeah, Ananda. Keeping the attentive faculty turned within. Koham. Who am I? That is practicing dying. Why should you fear it? You've been practicing it for years. What else is it? Go the physical body. Go the grosser forms of the prana. But most people, then all that stuff gets gathered. It's the physical body. So all of this is implied. The whole science and study of pranayama and its connection with the breath. If you have an interest in this, the great Raja Yogi BKS Iyengar has written 2 fabulous books. The first is called Light on Yoga, which is a deep study of asana. The second book is Light on Pranayama. It's an excellent, excellent book. And he gives you instructions on how to practice it. My suggestion is you're best suited to study pranayama with a qualified teacher. Because once you start playing with energy, people can start getting a little bit wackadoodle if you're not practicing it responsibly and under guidance. All right, next mantra.
Akshini nirabidhyetam akshibhyam chakshuhu sha adityaha. Eyes were separated out. From the eyes, sight emerged, and from sight, Aditya, the sun.
Yes. So what we have then is the little birdie peeps out of the egg. After its nostrils comes its eye. Then emerges our sense of sight. And from the sense of sight comes the sun, light. Now again, there's just layers of meaning. One of the other names for the sun is Surya, which is one of the oldest names of God. Get it in the Vedas. Because the sun becomes, or in the physical world, is the giver of the vital life force. It makes plants grow, we get our vitamin D. Nothing could grow without the sun. So here, what emerges is not only the sense of sight, which, like the sun, illumines everything. I see things. But also the life force itself. So, like electricity, the life force is not light, it's not motion, it's not sound. But when electricity moves through the light bulb, it lights up. The bulb cannot light itself. When it moves through the fan moves. The fan can't move on its own. When it moves through the stereo, it sings. Cannot sing without the electricity. So also, Everything in this world is jada, inert. Even the body is just chemistry. But it is the life force that enlivens everything. In the second chapter of Gita, the 16th verse, Lord Krishna plays with two very interesting words, sat, which means existence, and bhava, which means being. What he says is, if it doesn't have existence, nasato vidyate bhavaha. If it doesn't have existence, it has no being. So, we say the chair is, the table is, the lamp is, the horns of a hare, they're just imagination. The child of a barren woman is just imagination. So if it doesn't exist, it can't have any being. Then he flips it around. And he says, essentially, only being has real existence. And what is being? Being is another name for I, self. Only the self is. Brahma Satyam Jagat Nitya. Brahman alone is. The self alone is. The Jagat, the world of name and form. Nitya, illusory, or we can say a conditioned reality. Coffee mug, bowl, vase, those are the forms. The reality of them is clay. Couch, lamp, human bodies, dogs and frogs. They are names and forms. What they are is consciousness, which is bhava, being. So this life force, real. All right, next verse.
Karnau nirabhidyatam karnabhyam shrotram shrotradrishaha. Ears burst forth, from the ears proceeded hearing, from hearing the quarters.
Yes. So one of the things he's starting to imply here is the Vedantic relationship between what we call the tanmatras, the five elements, and the phenomenal world. I had a lot of trouble with this when I first started to study. There's earth, air, fire, water, and space. Those aren't elements. Helium is an element. Oxygen is an element. Earth is not an element. And it all has to do with the yogic ideas of perception itself. For some of you, you've heard me do this before, so be patient for the new people. So let's look at the coffee table here in my living room. What's the coffee table made of? It's made of wood. What's wood made of? Cellulose. What's cellulose? Mostly carbon. That's an element. That's how we would look at it as modern day people. But If I were to dream that I'm sitting here in my living room and I see the coffee table, what's the coffee table of my dream made of? Seeability. I can touch it, touchability. I just polished it with my orange pledge this week. I don't have the pledge, I have orange pledge. Smellability. If I spill salsa on it, I can taste it. Tasteability. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. Makes a noise when I bang on it. All in various combinations. That's what the coffee table of my dream is made of. So, earth is smellability. Those of us who may have grown up in an agrarian situation, newly plowed earth. Air, the sense of touch. You can feel the wind on your skin. Fire, seeability. Water, tasteability. And space, sound. Here in space. So what the ancients would do, they would say there are these 5 tanmatras, these 5 subtle elements. And then what happens? They go through what we call the panchakarana, the 5-fold division and subsequent recombination. Very scientific. But basically, they divide and recombine in all sorts of ways, and they show up in the subtle form as the people, places, things, and conditions of the dream state, and of a grosser form right here in the waking state reality. So one of the ideas that the Upanishads thunder, this phenomenal world is nothing but the play of consciousness. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is verily Brahman. It's consciousness. But it shows up as sights, sounds, tastes, touches, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and odors. And it combines into the seer, the seeing, and the seen, the hearer, the hearing, and the heard. All refracts into all of that. So as he's going through this Tweety bird coming out of the eggshell, what we have is this further and further division of consciousness into these various senses and the things sense. So we just did ears, didn't we? Yeah. Okay. So out next comes the ears of the cosmic Tweety bird, and then all the things heard, consciousness manifesting as hearing, a hearer, and things heard. Next mantra.
Tvang nirabhidyata tvacho lomani lombhya oshidha vanaspatayo. Then the skin was separated out, from the skin proceeded hair, and from the hair the herbs and trees.
So for the cosmic Purusha, skin comes next. And this is on a macrocosmic level, like the surface of the earth. Just like for you and me, we have hair that comes out of our skin. So for the macrocosm, we have things that grow out of the earth. Plants, here they call it herbs. Trees with fruit, grains, all these various things. So the herbs, the living plants come out of the skin of the earth and become food. Now, one of the truth principles of the material world, people don't like this truth. Life feeds on life. I don't want to hurt anything. Well, you cannot survive without consuming life in some form. Many of us choose to be vegetarian, but we're still consuming life. Does a tomato feel pain when you slice it? It's an interesting question. Any of you read the book called Overstory? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Fabulous novel. It's about trees, about sentience as it occurs in trees. Fascinating things, like you have a grove of trees and a bunch of insects attack it over here, and they will communicate chemically. They put out the things to resist the bugs, and it goes down into their root system, which then communicates with the root system of other trees. Clear on the other side of the forest, will start producing the chemicals that are bug resistant. That's sentience, very different than the animal kingdom.
Or fungi.
Yeah.
Fungi are amazing at communicating.
Or have you ever seen phototropic plants? Kids don't usually use those. David, you're old enough to remember. Did you ever have a wandering Jew or a coleus?
Yes.
They don't. Those aren't houseplants people have much anymore. But what happens when you put one in a window?
The leaves face the sun.
Hmm?
The leaves face the sun.
The leaves turn towards the sun. There's this beautiful kind of red and green coleus that's sitting there, and then a week later, all you see is the underside of the leaves. They turn toward the sun. How do they know to turn towards the sun? How do they know where the sun is? There's sentience there. Not like your brain or my brain, but there's life. I was at Vic's yesterday and I bought curry leaves. Curry leaves are sentient, they're alive. As are the potatoes and the tomatoes. So life feeds on life. Just look at the phenomenal world. This is what happens. It's not good or bad. It just is. even when you die. What happens to your body? If you're buried in the ground, what happens to it?
Food for the bugs.
Hmm?
Food for the bugs and bacteria.
And what about if you're cremated? Then what happens?
Goes into the air.
Well, food for trees. What is your body doing? It's consuming a mountain of food in your 70, 80, or 90 years. And what comes out the other end? A mountain of poop, which is also food. And what happens to your body when you're done with it? Food for worms. So, in some traditions, when you sit down at a meal, you thank God for the food. In some of the Sufi traditions, thank the food for you because it's sentient itself. Even if it's vegetarian. So here, again, the mystic symbolism, just like hair growing out of the body, the vegetable world grows out of the skin of the earth's surface and becomes food, all with its origin in sentience. Next mantra.
Nabher nirabhidyata nabhya apano panan mrityu. A navel burst forth, and from the navel the apana, and from apana death.
Yes. So the navel bursts forth, the belly button.
I think we missed one.
Oh, sorry.
Page 68.
All right. Hridayam nirabhidyata hridayan mano manas chandramaha. The heart sprung up, from the heart proceeded the mind, and from the mind the moon.
From the mind, the moon. Okay, so the idea here is we metaphorically locate the mind in the Anahata Chakra, the heart chakra, the Hridaya, the heart. That's an interesting word. The root is Krit, which is where we get the German word Herz and the English word heart. And as words travel between Indo-European languages, the H sound frequently will turn to a K sound. So the root Krit for heart is the same as the root Krit, where you get cordia, cuore, corazon, cardiac. It's all the same root. But what the ancients would do if one of us were to say, which one of you is David? Please identify yourself. You might raise your hand. But most people don't. I'm Jim. Nobody goes, I'm Jim. Or only Setu goes, I'm Setu. He points to his shoulder. But most people, they indicate their heart. So the ancients didn't really understand brains too much, located the mind, heart, because the mind is where we get the seat of our individuality, where we have this collection of I-ness and mind. So if you're out at a social event and you meet someone, well, tell me about yourself. What's usually the answer? What I do, where I'm from, what my relationships are, what my status is in the society, maybe my education. All of that are ideas of self, usually just related to the body. Those ideas are in the mind. This is where we have ahankara, ego, ideas that create a personal sense of self, which is located in the mind. Mind, intellect, we don't have to worry about that distinction right now. Hear what the Upanishad is saying. The mind emerges. We metaphorically located in the heart. Doesn't mean your mind is geographically located in the body. Any thoughts on this? Next month.
नाभिर्निरभिद्यत नाभ्याम् apano panan mrityuh. A navel burst forth, from the navel the apana, and from apana death.
So the next is the belly button, the navel, are originally connected to our mothers. But one of the maxims that we find in scripture, certain is death for the born, and certain is birth for the dead. So the implication here, because normally when we think of the umbilical cord, that's where we're connected to the placenta at birth, the navel, the root of it all. And then the apana is the downward flowing energy. Here he doesn't identify it as the udana, the escape, the ejection button, but where things are eliminated and ejected from the body. But the idea here is certain for the born is death. Nobody gets out alive. True story. It's way back in the mid-'80s. I had a day, it was a Wednesday afternoon, actually, group that was largely consisted of young men who had AIDS and who were dying. And there were other people who were able to come during the daytime. And there was this one young man, James, and he had just joined, and he was a good yogi. And was starting to get sick. A lot of truth telling in this group. So one of the other students says, James, what's it like to be dying? And James just laughed, 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 laughed. Looked at this other fellow and says, we're all dying. Some of us just have a date that's a little more certain than others. That's all. Youth is no defense against death. Young people die all the time. Jimmy Carter just turned 100. He ain't done yet. Who's to say? Hebrew scriptures say 70, 70 years. I figure any time beyond 70 is a bonus day. But you're going to die. Now, this is not a teaching meant to depress us or to frighten us. Having a human body is a precious thing. Yoga talks about the evolution of the jiva, the sense of individuality. We've been animals, we've been birds, we've been all sorts of things, but to attain a human birth in the evolutionary movement, it's a rare and precious thing. Even more precious is to have courage, the warrior spirit, to be virya. Even more precious is to come in contact with a valid means of knowledge, a real truth teaching. Even more precious is to meet a woman or a man who can show us path to the awakened state of mind, to moksha. If we've been fortunate enough to have that commitment, it is the result of millions of lifetimes lived intelligently, and probably a few screw-ups. Don't waste it. It's the body is essentially a vehicle for the realization of the self. If, on the other hand, you think it's all about cash and prizes, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, more, better, different, gimme, status, well, nobody takes a U-Haul to their funeral. It's all left behind, unless you're an Egyptian, I think they do. Everything you've gathered, all the possessions, all the people, bye-bye. You leave them all behind, except for one thing. So in Gita, Krishna's been explaining this journey towards moksha to Arjuna. And Arjuna asks, what if I don't make it in a lifetime? Am I doomed? Do I have to start all over again as a worm? Krishna says, no. You do take your yoga with you. And if you strive hard for liberation and you don't achieve it in this lifetime, don't worry. My devotee is never destroyed. You will be born again into a family where you develop the impressions, the sanskaras, where you're soon united with your yoga and finish the job. So we take great Mahatmas like Ramana Maharshi, spontaneously attained realization at, what was he, 16, something like that. rest of us work so hard this lifetime. Well, probably the lifetime before that, he was a little on the dull side. Did a lot of sadhana, but didn't complete. Didn't realize the self. Just had a little bit of ignorance. Came in again, soon united with his knowledge, and one of the greatest sages of the 20th century. So the point here is strive hard for liberation. Everything else in the end is vanity. All temporary, all trinkets and baubles at best. All right, next mantra.
Shishnam niravidyata shishnat treto tretasa apaha iti prathamodhyaya prathamakhanda. The generative organs burst forth, from these organs the seeds, and from the seeds the waters.
So the metaphor here is our genitalia, both for women and men. When you're ready to do the mufti pufti, things get wet. From the generative organ comes seminal fluid. For the woman, her lubrication. So the idea is for the cosmic person, this is where the waters come. And from the waters, again, comes so much of life. And then in that marvelous act of procreation, how is it from the generative organs? This incredible thing called the human life comes forth. Such a miracle. So, the whole phenomenal animal kingdom, even plants, I guess, to some degree, one of the constants for reproduction, most of the time, is some form of sex. Now, too frequently in the West and in the East, we get sex seen as kind of a negative thing. Oh, you should practice brahmacharya, celibacy. God forbid you shouldn't have sexual desire. This is not the deeper teaching of yoga. I'm having a senior moment. What is that famous South Indian temple where in the inner sanctum there's all this erotic art? Khajuraho?
Yeah, Khajuraho.
Yeah. Say it again.
Khajuraho.
Khajuraho, yeah. Anyway, so for the ancients, the idea of sex was not seen as something nasty, but it was something sacred. So this is what I would say to you about sex. Your sex powers are God-given. That's exactly what we just heard in the Upanishad. Not to be despised, but also not to be taken lightly. This is the generative power of the universe operating through you and me. You have sex with another person, your psyches, your auras merge. You get not only physical intimacy, but we get emotional, psychological intimacy. If, for example, you're in a primary relationship and you've been with one person for a long time and are physically intimate, have you had the experience where it's difficult to tell their thoughts from your own thoughts and feelings? You share a lot of that. Very powerful stuff. Ultimately, it's the source of creativity, so many energies within the mind and the body. Brahmacharya, usually translated as chastity or celibacy. Listen carefully. It is a gift, not a moral position. If you are not so situated karmically for brahmacharya to come easily, the attempt at chastity, the attempt at celibacy will be an enormous burden, and you'll fight, wrestle, and be filled with guilt and shame, and it will bend the mind and make it unsuitable for yoga. Others of us, the deeper meaning of brahmacharya means to roam around in Brahman. For some of us, the desire leaves us. Those energies move in another direction. You will know. The import of the verse is not to despise sexuality. Too often in the Christian world, you get the message. Sex is something vile, base, filthy, and disgusting that you save for someone you love.
That's a good one.
I'm not making this up.
Wow.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And too frequently in the West, and now in India too, we have marriage delayed. You know, young people become capable of making babies 14, 15, 16 years of age. Through much of history, that's when people got married. Now, you know, people wait till their mid-30s. But that creates a whole lot of psychological tension when people try to either direct those energies in ways that are against your own self-nature, against your spiritual well-being. People go from partner to partner to partner to partner to partner, looking for the high of that direct intimacy. Lots and lots of problems that can happen. So again, your sexual powers are God-given, not to be despised, but not to be taken lightly. You don't get gold stars for being a celibate if you find it difficult. If you find celibacy difficult, find a partner and be sane about how you use your sexual energy. Some of us are called to an ascetic life. It is a lot easier, I'll tell you that. It's not forever. All right, one more.
Section 2.
Oh, do we stop there? We start a new section?
Yeah, that was the end of it.
I think we'll quit a few minutes early then, and we'll start section 2 next week. Any thoughts or questions? Again, all this is metaphor. All this is metaphor. And this is all about this phenomenal world. Just one way of talking about how things come into being. Other scriptures use different paradigms. We have yet to get to the Jnana Kanda, the knowledge portion, which is Koham. Who am I? We get that profound question from this Upanishad, and we will also get the great Mahavakya, Prajnanam Dhamma. What is Brahman? What is ultimate reality? It's consciousness. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha.